Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hard Knocks Fighting TV. I'm Ryan Ballantyne alongside Ari Tobe, the president and CEO of the Hard Knocks Fighting Championship, and some of the best MMA in the world is about to hit your screen. Stay tuned. Up next, a battle between two fighters making their debut, Ari. We've got Idris Adamashyan and Jason Fournier. Now, Ari, I know when guys step into the cage for the very first time, it certainly brings a bit of a butterfly feeling to the stomach. You've competed at some of the highest levels in sport. What's that like when you head out to the arena for the very first time?
I think one of the most important things in competition is being able to be calm, cool, and collected in the heat of battle. And that's going to be these guys' biggest challenge, is getting a good performance in front of the massive crowd and the large, the noise and the lights and everything that comes with a big MMA promotion. So I'm looking forward to these guys challenging their inner demons and coming in here and banging.
Idris Adamashyan and Jason Fournier heading into the cage for the very first time next.
This school of Hard Knocks Fight is an amateur bout in the 150-pound division and is brought to you by Bruce Hardy Photography, the official photographer of Hard Knocks Fighting. And now, let's meet the fighters.
Next up, in the 150-pound weight class, we see Jason Fournier taking on Idris Adamashyan. And Jason Fournier making his way down to the cage right now. A traditional karate fighter. However, Jeremy said he spent time in a lot of different martial arts and decided, well, if there's a place where I can try all my martial arts together, it's mixed martial arts. And so he makes his debut here tonight.
I always find it convenient when you have a whole bunch of martial arts that you've trained in, that they create a sport for you. And they have done so here for Jason Fournier. And again, you talk about him being a traditional karate fighter. There's not that many in the UFC, but the ones that are in the UFC are very prominent. Lyoto Machida is an excellent fighter, and he's making his way, pushing forward now in middleweight as opposed to light heavyweight, and he is a force to be reckoned with, and so karate is for real. And Jason Fournier, with all the training that he has here, is going to have a really big competitive advantage with all that experience.
Now, of course, Jason Fournier, an older fighter to be making his debut. We asked him why step into the cage. I believe 33 years old, and I said, why step into the cage now? And he said, well, I want to teach martial arts, and that's his goal is to become a teacher in martial arts. And he said, how can I teach the sport if I've never put the theory into practice? And so he wants to have a couple MMA fights to put the theory into practice. He said, you can train martial arts your entire life and be the best guy at your gym, but if you never do it for real, then you haven't done it.
And his opponent.
Now we meet Idris Adamashyan, and he comes down to the cage just a few months ago, moving to Canada from Ireland, and he said he pretty much got right off the plane and went right to Dynamic MMA, and I questioned whether or not trainer Vince was just standing at the airport going, kid, you look like you can fight, come with me.
Well, you know, I wouldn't put past Vince. He's pretty good like that. He's good at recognizing talent, and talent is what Idris Adamashyan has. He has been all over the world. He was born in France. He's well-traveled, came from Ireland, and he considers himself a kind of an all-around fighter. Has the tendency, he says, to just go in and brawl with whoever you put in front of him.
Yeah, his coach, Matt Craco, who you can see in the back there, just described him as the unique Irish brawler. He said if he was in UFC 1, which is a question I ask every fighter we get here in the Hard Knocks cage for the first time, he said they'd probably call me a striker. And so it'll be interesting to see what he could do. He said a very well-rounded ground game, as we expect from all the guys at Dynamic. But Idris said his preference is striking.
Well, and what Idris said here, as we just quickly look at the tail of the tape, 151 for Fournier, Adamashyan 148.5. The age difference, 24 for Adamashyan, both these guys making their amateur debut. Idris Adamashyan makes it all the way around. He fights against everybody in his gym because everyone has a different style and something different that they do really well. And what he wants to do is do all those things well.
Well, we've seen guys from Dynamic. We see 2 or 3 fighters from Dynamic on almost every Hard Knocks card, and Guys like Anton Tokarczuk, Matt Prako, very successful fighters have come from Dynamic, and Idris Adamashon trying to be the latest in that long line of successful fighters from Dynamic MMA. Now for our official fighter introductions, we'll head inside the cage to Jay Denance.
And now, the official Hard Knocks fighter introductions. In the blue corner for Build 360, it's his amateur debut. He's 33 years old and stands 5 feet, 7 inches tall, and weighed in at 151 pounds, fighting out of PMA Karate from Calgary. Please welcome Hard Knocks fighter, Jason Fournier. And in the red corner for Pete the Plumber, the hero of plumbing, it's his amateur debut. He's 24 years old and stands 5 feet, 6 inches tall. He weighed in at 148.5 pounds, fighting out of Dynamic MMA from Calgary. Please welcome Hard Knocks fighter, Idris Aminashan. This bout will be contested under amateur rules. The referee in charge of the Hard Knocks action is Mr. Brian Beauchamp.
Brian Beauchamp, the referee in charge of the action, as Idris Adamashon comes out of the red corner in the white trunks, the black trunks for Jason Fournier out of the blue corner. We'll see if these two fighters and their contrasting styles will provide us with some good entertainment. Fight number 2 of the night underway.
Expect some fireworks here from Adamashon. Just loading that hand up right now as we see a couple kicks here from Jason Fournier to start us off.
And you could expect those, of course, being a karate fighter, the kicks to come in and trying to keep his opponent at a distance. Those front kicks, Jeremy, a nice leg kick there. Adamashon eating it to get in a little closer, but a nice job of tying up his arms and taking him to the cage by Jason Fournier.
Best way to tie up a fighter who's going to try and swing is grab his arms, and good job by Jason Fournier. Now some pressure up in the cage. Adamashon needs to be careful here because he doesn't want to get guillotined, and this is the time to get it done. There's not much sweat there, so it's really hard to slip off, and you can see that arm just waiting there. Now it is locked in. Oh, the hands have come separate now for Fournier. Good pressure here by Adamashon up against the cage.
Yeah. So far, so good for Adamashon up against the cage. Like you said, surviving that submission attempt. Fournier trying to do some work, though, Jeremy, and negate the advantage of position that Adamashon has by staying busy, keeping striking. A nice knee there from Adamashon. And now it's going to be Fournier taking Idris up against the cage. And Idris very quickly getting out of that. And now, again, the grappling continues between these two amateur fighters.
Good knee there by Jason Fournier, landing there to the appreciation of this crowd. Good defense by Adamashon. He's keeping those hands on those knees, and every time the hand leaves the knee, that's when a knee comes in. Looks like an attempted double here by Jason Fournier, and not much of a grip here. Good underhook, good defense there by Idris Adamashon.
Adamashon has the double unders. Beauchamp had seen enough, separating the two fighters, and will reset them center of the cage.
And that's something that we're starting to see more from officials there. If the action's not happening, but it is now. Big swings here by both fighters. Now a good clinch there, a Muay Thai clinch by Jason Fournier, and a good takedown by Adamashon. Now he's going to try and get to work here on the cage, and right up, we got a good view here.
Yes, very, very good view as Adam Michon is on top of Jason Fournier, and you can hear his coaches saying stay busy. And again, those elbows have to go to the body. They cannot go to the head of a down opponent here in Calgary under the amateur rules. So again, those elbows can only go to the body. And you can see Fournier trying to sneak up here, Jeremy, and it looks like he might be trying a submission attempt here.
Well, if you get the high guard and you're able to isolate one of those arms, but Adam Michon doing an excellent job keeping both his hands in. Good fists being landed here by Amishon, who really needs to be busy here if he wants to secure himself a round. Fournier had the better of the standing, Amishon with the takedown, and a nice good shot being landed to the side of Fournier as he attempted a Kimura right at the end, but nothing happened.
And you can see the disappointment in his face that the round wasn't about 15 or 20 seconds longer, because you can see he just had that position. And we talked about jiu-jitsu being that game of patience, waiting for your opponent to move into the right spot so you can grab onto him. And it looks like Fournier got that, but he got it about 257, and he needed it about 220.
Well, when he eventually moves up to pro, he'll get that extra 2
Yeah,
minutes
that's right,
and go from there. So we
No
look at
problem.
our featureproductions.ca replay. This is going to be some of the action that we saw there. Some big swings. That's a good one that landed, and one right back by Fournier. And this is where we're going to go right up against the cage. Good work by Fournier, and being able to counter after taking a fairly decent shot. He gave one right back and got to a good, solid position in that Muay Thai clinch.
Yeah, both fighters comporting themselves well in the first round in the MMA cage. And as they get some advice from their coaches, you kind of feel, Jeremy, when they're right up here in front of you, that you don't want to give away too much if you see a guy sneaking a submission up, because you don't want to give that away to his opponent.
Well, and you and I have fairly loud voices to start with. Our mics are quite down, but we try our best not to make any sort of hints, but that's why they're in there and we are out here.
Yes.
I found out that when you go into the cage, sometimes some bad things can happen to you. But
Yeah, that's what you get when you let the boss do a single leg.
yeah, well, no, it's just a hernia, no big deal.
Both fighters now ready for round number 2. Idris Michon coming out of the red corner in the white trunks, the black trunks for Jason Fournier out of the blue corner. The referee assuring that both doors are closed. Both fighters are ready, and round 2 now underway.
And both fighters now a little more traditional stance for striking. And a good catch and a nice big punch there by Idris Michon and taking down Jason Fournier. And we talk about point scoring. That one is going to sit in the mind of the judges for quite a while. Impressive by Michon.
Yeah, kind of a nice combination of grabbing his leg, pulling it towards him to pull him off balance, and then firing that right hand out to knock him back the other way and secure that takedown. May not have been the hardest punch to the face, but still looked very good and very much, like you said, will leave the impression in the eyes of the judges.
Well, it doesn't have to be hard, it just has to be accurate. We've seen many times in the Hard Knocks cage, you catch somebody at the right spot and they're going down. And good job by Michon there. Excellent defense shown so far on the ground by Jason Fournier, taking away the striking of Michon.
Fournier has shown good defense whenever Michon's had an advantageous position so far in this fight. But that being said, when you've got that advantageous position and you got into it as Michon did, defense isn't necessarily going to win you the round. It's just going to prevent you from losing the fight.
Well, an attempted at a pass here by Michon and to be able to get into side control, but very smart fighting here from Fournier. He slipped in that butterfly guard on that left side. So a good job to be able to take what your opponent's giving you and still being able to defend by Fournier.
Fournier now reaching around and trying to find a hole to escape Michon.
Now more of a half guard position. 1 minute 15 seconds remaining, and on top for the majority of this round is Idris Michon. And the thing is, as long as he continues to be busy and lay those shots down, he's scoring in the minds of the judges. And, you know, the first round was really close to call. I thought Fournier got a little bit of the better of it, but Michon here trying to win this round to make sure that he has a chance going into round 3.
And you can see Michon, again, staying busy. We saw in the first fight of our night that Brian Beauchamp stood up the opponents when he didn't feel like there was enough action being done, but so far so good for Michon on top. Fournier now trying to hold down his opponent and maybe try and find a position where his opponent can't lay any more damage.
Yeah, and here he's trying for mission control, which makes him able to have access to a couple different submissions. The omoplata and the gogoplata are both positions that be used from there, but it also isolates an arm of your opponent and takes it away. And if Jason Fournier is seeing that Anna Michon is right-handed, he wants to take away that right bomb. Less than 10 seconds remaining in the round, Ryan.
And this round just about coming to a close, and Anna Michon ends it on top in a very good round for the youngster. He comes out and puts a solid round 2 together. And this one, Jeremy, like you said, a very difficult first round to call. Not sure which way the judges went, depending on their vantage point, of course. And we'll see here who got the better of it. And in round number 3, if either one of these guys can finish the fight off.
Well, it's going to be you lose some of those submission possibilities near the end of the fight because as the sweat builds up, as we look at a featureproductions.ca replay, this is that big punch, and I think it just caught him off balance. You were right, Ryan. There wasn't much behind that punch, but you catch that kick and just a little bit of a push, and that's going to put your opponent down. But that does stick in the minds of the judges. They don't see the replay. They make their call before they see that replay.
Yes, yeah, of course. The scores go up before we decide what was the best move of the fight. Again, that's going to be the moment that probably sticks out from round number 2, despite the fact Anna Michon was on top for the majority of the second round. I think that one's solidly in the red corner. It's the first round, of course, that was very back and forth. And we'll see what the judges had to think about it, because in your mind, if you're Anna Michon, you can't rely on the fact that you won round 1. You're going to have to come out and try and win the third round. If you're Fournier, same thing. You know you lost round 2. You know you're behind at least one round. And so he needs to come out and try and finish the fight, because when you're in a situation where you don't know who won the first round, it could be up in the air. You can't rely on it. He's got to finish. Anna Michon, on the other hand, needs to win this round.
And for those of you who are wondering why it's taken so long, it's actually 1.5 minutes for the amateurs under the Calgary Commission rules. You don't not a minute, so that's why you're seeing 90 seconds in the corner. Just for those of you who are at home timing, because I'm sure there's somebody there is timing.
So both fighters get their 90 seconds mandated rest. And Fournier again trying to start the round with kicks, but very quickly cutting off the cage, Anna Michon. But Fournier with a nice drag takedown, rolls over and secures a dominant position.
What he did there, he got in a position where he was not sure whether he would get the throw, and about halfway down he decided, look, I'm not going to end up on top, so I'm going to focus on re-rolling my opponent. That's a wrestling technique that you know at a certain point you know you're getting thrown. Now it's what you're going to do when you land. Are you going to be the guy who lands and stays on his back, or the one that rolls through? Good wrestling technique here by Jason Fournier, as we're about 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in round number 3.
Fournier continuing to work. Anna Michon trying to isolate an arm, using that submission attempt to try and climb out. But now a very nice transition from Fournier, Jeremy, and he's got his back.
Excellent transition, and now he's got a body triangle. If he can hold this position, he will not leave the back of Idris Anna Michon. There's no possible way that Anna Michon cannot turn in that triangle, although he's trying for it as much as he can, and perhaps Anna Michon's going to be the exception to the rule as he does turn in that body triangle. Normally it's a pretty good security that guy's not going to turn in, but the sweat builds up, and Anna Michon, not quite the biggest guy.
Muscling his way through that body triangle to wind up on top. Anna Michon is looking good here with 1.5 minutes to go in round number 3. A nice elbow to the midsection there, and you can hear the referee cautioning him, just make sure those blows aren't to the head, because again, under Calgary rules, no blows to the head of a down opponent in the amateur fights. And a triangle attempt, an arm in triangle attempt there briefly, and moving it around.
Anna Michon doing classic technique to get out of it. It's basically you turn towards the arm that you have and you try and elbow down, and that's exactly what he did. He kept turning until he was able to get free of that triangle.
Anna Michon on top with 50 seconds to go, and we see Jason Fournier now is going to have to find a submission here, Jeremy, in the next 45 seconds if he's going to try and win this fight, because again, the first round too close to call, and Anna Michon's been on top for the better part of the last minute here in the round, and Fournier maybe not doing enough in the first minute
to change the eyes of the judges. So he's going to need to find a submission here with just 25 seconds to go.
Well, Anna Michon continuing to put pressure on, and again, Fournier with the initial takedown, but with Anna Michon being on top, that's not where you want to end up. Now just short time remaining here for Fournier, and like you said, Ryan, this is not an advantageous position for Fournier to be in if he wants to win this fight.
And the final seconds tick off. Fournier on the bottom, Anna Michon on top. And we'll see what the judges thought, whether or not it's a 30-27 or a 29-28 score here from the judges. But I would expect an Anna Michon victory.
Well, Anna Michon did what he needed to do in that fight. He was able to be aggressive. He was able to do what he did and adapt from what happened in round number 1. And if you look at Jason Fournier, he is a smart fighter, and he knew at the end of the fight that he probably ended up on the bottom. This is that transition that we saw where Anna Michon was trying to use the Kimura to sweep. Good transition by Fournier to end up on the back, but there was no danger there because Anna Michon had his chin in the whole time and amazingly was able to spin through the body triangle and get out of that position. So excellent job by Anna Michon, and again, these guys put on a great show for us here at the Hard Knocks 34, brought to you by Big 4 Motors.
And now, the Big 4 Motors Hard Knocks 34 official decision, brought to you by Bruce Hardy Photography. The winner by split decision, in the blue corner, Jason Fournier.
So Jason Fournier winning by split decision. A bit of a strange decision in my eyes, but the judges call it the way they call it, and we're going to have our winner with Ryan. Our winner, Jason Fournier.
I'll get you here in the center of the cage. A split decision victory for you. What are your thoughts on the decision?
Maybe I haven't been doing this long enough to be dishonest, but I don't feel like I won that fight. I spent most of it on my back. I was exhausted. He took it to me, man. He really did. That was his fight.
So a solid 3 rounds from both of you. Looked like some submission attempts both ways. It seemed like he had you on top of it for most of the 3 rounds. What were your thoughts on the fight?
When we started, it didn't take long for me to realize he was strong in the middle, at least it felt stronger than me. It's amateur rules, so thought I could try to work a bit of jiu-jitsu from the bottom. Almost got a few, but he's a tough guy, so didn't work out that way.
So now you get the win in your amateur debut. I'm sure you got some sponsors and coaches to thank.
Yeah, Todd Johnson. I couldn't do any of this stuff without him. I got Jimmy and Holly in my corner. Some family in the audience. Eden, how you doing, bud? That one's for you. And some of the friends, so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear.
Knocks too. Thank you, Hard Knocks, for giving me the opportunity.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it one more time for your winner, Jason Fournier. So a controversial split decision win there for Jason Fournier, Ari, and even he was surprised to hear the result, but of course the judges see it from all different angles, and they obviously saw enough to see Jason the winner.
Yeah, I think the judges don't really have a set criteria in MMA right now, and so if you leave it to the judges, it's always a crapshoot. I think what I liked about the fight was that Idris got on top and was controlling a lot of it. I think Fournier in the future is going to need to not be on his back so much, or he's going to really need to do better submissions and actually finish a guy to win fights like that on a regular basis.
So Idris Anna Michon falls to Jason Fournier in both of their amateur debuts.
To find out more about Hard Knocks Fighting and upcoming Hard Knocks events, please visit hardknocksfighting.com.
Next up, 2 fighters making their amateur debuts as we see Jai Hogan step into the cage against Nolan Shergold. Both of these guys say they're ready to get into the cage after training for about 1.5 years. It's time to finally put those skills to the test, Ari.
These guys are both tall, long, lanky. I think it's going to be a really good striking war.
Shergold 6'5", 185 pounds. He gets set to take on Jai Hogan.
This school of hard knocks fight is an amateur bout in the 185-pound division and is brought to you by Urban Optique. And now, let's meet the fighters.
We now meet Nolan Shergold, who will be coming down to the cage for our first fight in the night. Jeremy, why don't you help us quickly and briefly with the rules for the amateurs here tonight?
So with the amateur fighters, they are not allowed to have any kicks or knees to the head at any time, and in the ground, there is no traditional ground and pound, so you won't see any of the elbows or fists to the head of a downed opponent. It is designed to protect the amateur fighters who are just making their entrance into the sport, and ground and pound can do some significant damage, so in the Calgary Commission, those are the rules. You also have seen the standard rules of no twisting, leg locks, and things like that.
Now, of course, Nolan Shergold making his debut here at 185. An interesting story, Jeremy. A year ago, started training MMA, was 100 pounds heavier, and has lost 100 pounds, now standing 6'5", just 185 pounds, long limbs on Nolan Shergold.
Well, that height is really going to come into play against his opponent, Jai Hogan, but this is something that a lot of people are starting to do. They're getting into mixed martial arts for the fitness aspect of it, as well as the competition. And when you get to a certain point, especially like Nolan Shergold, where you lose a whole bunch of weight, and then you want to get in the cage and see if you really have what it takes to be a pro fighter.
So Nolan Shergold takes his first trot around the cage, preparing for his first fight, and we will meet his opponent here shortly.
His opponent.
And now we do meet Jai Hogan, who comes to us with a 1-0 record out of Canuckles at Mixed Martial Arts here in Calgary. And Jai training for a year and a half and is ready to keep this fighting going despite starting the sport at an advanced age.
Well, advanced by his standard is 30 years old, so really not all that advanced. But as I'm 30 now, and I hopefully don't feel that old, and it's really going to be a test here for Jai Hogan to manage his energy system so that he spreads it out over the entire fight. He's a bit of a bigger fighter in his stature and musculature, so he needs to manage that energy and make sure that he does a good job with it.
As we see the tail of the tape, that 3-inch height advantage for Nolan Shergold, not much else separating the two, but some experience in the cage for Jai Hogan. We'll see if that plays a part here in the early going.
When you look at Shergold as well, has that experience in the Muay Thai.
Now, I talked to him before the fights at the weigh-ins, and I asked him if he felt any pressure being the curtain jerker, as it will, and he said, yeah, there's a little added pressure knowing that he's got to set the pace for the fights tonight. He's got to help provide the energy for the fans and get them going. Now for the official introductions, we'll go inside the cage to Jaden Nance.
And now, the official Hard Knocks Fighter introductions. In the blue corner for Bill 360, it's his amateur debut. He's 20 years old and stands 6 feet, 5 inches tall. He weighed in at 182 1/2 pounds, fighting out of Airdrie Martial Arts Center from Airdrie. Please welcome Hard Knocks fighter, Nolan Shergold. And in the red corner for Pete the Plumber, the hero of plumbing. He's 1-0 as an amateur, 32 years old, and stands 6 feet, 2 inches tall. He weighed in at 184 1/2 pounds, fighting out of Canuckles MMA from Calgary. Please welcome Hard Knocks fighter, Jai Hogan. This bout will be contested under amateur rules. The referee in charge of the Hard Knocks action is Mr. Brian Beauchamp.
Brian Beauchamp, our referee in charge of the action for our first fight and for several
of our fights tonight. One of the most experienced refs in the business. And we will get set to see what these two have to offer us as Hard Knocks 34 getting set to get underway. Jai Hogan out of the red corner in the black and white trunks, the black and white shorts for Nolan Shergold. They touch gloves and we are underway.
Trying to find that range is Nolan Shergold using the front leg kick and quickly taking the range away, and the takedown is Jai Hogan, and Jai Hogan looking to work from the top. Again, no traditional ground and pound, but that doesn't mean you can't lay those big shots to the side, and that's exactly what Jai Hogan's doing.
And Hogan looking like he wants to try and isolate an arm. Jeremy quickly got in to a mounted position, and under the rules here in Calgary, not necessarily the most advantageous place to be, because you can't lay those bombs to the face, and now as a result, he's got to try and adjust, and you see him give up the mount a bit and go a bit into side control, but now back in the mount, trying to push down his opponent and start to impose his will.
Well, he's trying to isolate that arm, but maybe giving the game away a little too early. With jiu-jitsu, you really want to have that sneak up and letting your opponent know, but that being said, here's a pretty good attempt on that arm now here by Jai Hogan. A lot of pressure, but it doesn't look like Nolan Shergold's in any real trouble here.
No, Shergold squeaks out of another submission attempt, and like you said, no subtlety on the jiu-jitsu game part of Jai Hogan. He's looking for that arm. He's looking to get a finish. And that's something you'll see with amateur fighters, especially as guys try and get the finish, and the surprise element comes with more experience.
Well, I was talking to Max Marin earlier, and he said that Jai Hogan is able to get a Kimura on him. So if he's able to get that on Max Marin, he's probably able to get it on many fighters he's going to be facing here in the Hard Knocks cage.
A nice defense there from Nolan Shergold, isolating Hogan's arm now and keeping it away, and hard to get a one-arm submission there for Hogan, but now he pulls that arm free.
And back to work again, still trying to isolate it, and you can know that Shergold's corner is going to give him the advice on how to deal with that, but it is in pretty tight now as there is a lock, and now those hands have come free. Big shots being landed to the chest now of Nolan Shergold.
Yeah, Shergold using the rules, keeping to the rules there, laying that ground and pound, but ground and pound to the body, and when you're getting punched in the chest like that, affects your air system. When you're as big a guy as Shergold is, you need air to get to that limbs, otherwise you're not going to be able to compete, and it's been a very solid first round here for Jai Hogan.
30 seconds remaining in round one, and continued dominance by Jai Hogan here in this top position as he looks like he's started to give up attacking that arm and now switch to these vicious knees to the side of Nolan Shergold. So going to be doing damage now with only 13 seconds to go.
Yeah, Shergold throwing some elbows of his own from the bottom, kind of the only offense he's had so far in the fight here, Jeremy. But it looks like it's going to be Jai Hogan ending the round like he began it, and that's on top of Nolan Shergold. Welcome to the cage, young man. Nolan Shergold gets a lesson there in cage control from Jai Hogan.
But if you look at the face of Nolan Shergold, he doesn't look to be all that phased. It's not that big of a disadvantage to lose that first round, especially with that, you know, that cage, maybe nervousness that you might have in your first fight. And looking in the corner of Jai Hogan, he also looks very calm. So good composure here shown by both of these fighters as we look at our featureproductions.ca replay of the takedown. And this is where they ended up. Jai Hogan rushing in inside of Nolan Shergold's reach, takes him down. No real conventional technique other than squeeze and drag, but it did work for him, and he landed some big shots from the top.
Yeah, and it was a very effective round, I thought, for Jai Hogan. Nolan Shergold coming back. When I talked to him in the weigh-ins, he said that he planned on getting to the third round. He wants to test his opponent's cardio, and you can see Jai Hogan so far seemingly all right with the first round's cardio, although not needing to work as hard on top, certainly, as Nolan was having to try and defend from the bottom. So we'll see whether or not that deep water feeling is there for Nolan Shergold.
Well, and you were mentioning, just quickly talk about our official here, Brian Beauchamp. Brian Beauchamp is actually a world champion in jiu-jitsu. So not only an accomplished wrestler, an accomplished referee, but he is a world champion in jiu-jitsu. So one of the best in the business that Calgary and Canada has to offer in Beauchamp.
So Nolan Shergold comes out of the blue corner, out of the red corner, Jai Hogan. And a little more tentative start here for Shergold, not throwing that big punch, but Hogan came in with a punch, and Jeremy again getting right inside that reach advantage.
Well, and Jai Hogan trying to bring him to the cage and bring him down, and he's pushed him to the cage and now has that nice little hook. But you look, and what Nolan Shergold really needs to focus on is getting his hips back and making sure that he's not getting set up for a throw. Now he's pushing up against the cage, but there's perhaps enough room for the takedown for Jai Hogan.
Yeah, Hogan trying the takedown again, but Shergold able to stay on his feet.
Needs to pummel in, does Nolan Shergold, and now he's got that Muay Thai clinch and a nice big knee to the chest. Those are good, and you're going to see a coach and a good reaction from the crowd on those knees.
Yeah, solid knees to the chest there, and Jai Hogan wants none of that. He drives Shergold right back up against the fence where he's had him for the majority of the first minute of round number 2 of 3 scheduled. Of course, 3 3-minute rounds in the amateur fights.
Trying to work inside. Now, what Nolan Shergold needs to do is he needs to pummel in with those hands, because those double underhooks are taking away a lot of offense. And now you see the pummel attempt, and as soon as it is, a nice drop to the double leg by Jai Hogan. He's trying to create space and take him down, and take him down he does. Nice takedown, but a fairly tight guillotine here being put on by Nolan Shergold.
Yeah, not sure what's going on with the other side, but before we got to see it, Jai Hogan pops out, but you were right, Jeremy, for a moment there. It looked like the guillotine attempt might have sunk in, but Jai Hogan able to pop out. And again, you can see him immediately going to work that arm.
Yeah, just getting on that Kimura, and you see the advice from the coach to double up on the grip to be able to stop that. And with Hogan off to the side like that, looked for Shergold to try and come on up on top. But this is very smart technique by Hogan, because he's keeping his back up against the cage. He does have the Kimura grip in now, but we'll see if he's able to take it to the side.
And you can hear his coaches yelling, do it, go for it. And you can see him rolling it over and using it as a sweep. Nolan Shergold, a nice sweep there to end up on top. The first time Shergold's had the dominant position in this fight, and we'll see what he can do with it.
And he needed to be careful for a brief second, because there was some risk there with that elbow, but Shergold able to come out with it and doing an excellent job here trying to remain busy. He's landed a few elbows, and now a big shot right to the ribs of his opponent. Unfortunately gets swept right back to his back, and Jai Hogan right back on top.
Yeah, powering out from the bottom, Jai Hogan back on top of Nolan Shergold. And Jerry Shergold's going to need to get some work and get out of this one quickly if he wants a chance to win this round as well.
Short time remaining, so it looks like Nolan Shergold might make it to that third round that he wanted to push his opponent to. And as we run out of time here, we are going to see a third round in our very first fight at 185 pounds. And a little bit of ray of sunlight for Nolan Shergold, but another round mostly dominated by Jai Hogan.
Well, and you got to wonder if this strategy isn't paying off for Nolan Shergold. Watching the two fighters get up from that exchange, Jai Hogan got up a little slowly, a little slower certainly than he did after the first round. And as soon as he was clear, we saw him jump up. And we'll see a replay here on our Feature Productions replay as we go down to that double leg takedown, Jeremy. And it took him a minute to secure it, but once he locked those hands, it was just a matter of time.
Yeah, locking both those hands underneath the bum of your opponent is giving you a really good solid base to be able to take him down. That being said, when the adjustment happened and Nolan Shergold spread out his legs into a bit of a sprawl, good adjustment by Jai Hogan, switching to have both his hands to the back of the knees, and an excellent takedown.
So by our scorecards, it has Jai Hogan up 2-0 on Nolan Shergold. He's going to need a finish here. Can't get to that 3 minutes if he wants to pick up a win. But it should be a very interesting finish here. And like I mentioned, Jeremy, Jai Hogan breathing a little heavier, a little down on his stool. Now, of course, I can't see the face of Nolan Shergold from here with the way he's positioned, but certainly seems to be in the same condition he was after the first round. So we'll see what effect this third round has on these two young fighters as Shergold and Jai Hogan go to the third round. Shergold in his amateur debut. So referee Brian Beauchamp decides that the fighters are ready, and they both come out and throw a big punch.
And Nolan Shergold took a big shot by Jai Hogan, and he kept on, so good on him for taking that. A big takedown there for Jai Hogan right up against the cage. That never feels good.
No, and Jai Hogan back in a familiar place for him, certainly in this fight, as he has spent the better part of the 3 rounds in a top position. And we'll see if he can get a finish here, Jeremy, or if again, he continues to work. Again, a good ground defense by Nolan Shergold so far in this fight.
Yeah, Shergold's been excellent at being able to recognize what techniques are going to be used on him and defending them accordingly. But if you look, Brian Beauchamp is warning these athletes to action, trying to tell them that they got to keep going, got to keep working, or he'll call them standing, and Beauchamp known to stand him up. Here's an attempt there, an isolation on one of the arms. It's not in that traditional arm bar, but now a bit of a spike there with that knee dropping right on the chest, and now a triangle position here for Nolan Shergold. It's not a full triangle because that another arm is trying to stick its way in there.
And you can see Shergold trying to jam that arm out and lock this triangle position in. Some nice defense from the bottom here, trying to finish the fight. Nolan Shergold, 2 nice submission attempts back to back, and Jai Hogan gets out of it again.
I'd be interested to have a look at that spike again, because under the amateur rules, stuff like that isn't allowed. But Beauchamp, one of the best in the business, was right on it. And now we have a nice attempt here at the choke. And good defense there. And now an arm triangle being locked in by Jai Hogan. And Hogan is not really in a position to finish it. He needs to hop towards this side camera that you're looking right now to be able to finish that one.
Now it's interesting, I'm listening to the coaches from both sides, and after those couple submission attempts, you heard Jai Hogan's coaches saying, stand up, just get out of this and stand up. But Jai Hogan's still in it. Nolan Shergold obviously knows he needs to finish here, and he'll be looking to try and get it in the 3rd round, looking for that submission, trying to be patient, Jeremy, like we said about that surprise finish and throwing your legs up last second to try and lock it in, and he's trying to isolate an arm again there.
And just taking his time, making sure that he can lock it in, and again, trying to be a little sneaky on it. And if I'm Jai Hogan's corner, I'm saying the exact same thing, which is stand up, and that's what Brian Beauchamp is going to give him right now. So get ready for some fireworks. As you know, Nolan Shergold is going to think he's behind, so he's going to be coming out swinging, and not able to connect there, and Jai Hogan locking up that double underhook position again.
Yeah, I think Jai Hogan is thinking that the fight is nearly over, and he's got a lock on this one if he can last these last 10 seconds. Shergold trying to do what he can do. A very promising debut for this amateur, but it looks like Jai Hogan will be moving to 2-0 in his amateur career.
Well, and good for him, because Jai Hogan pushed through. It looks like, you can see him now, he looks very tired, but able to push through that tiredness and do a very good job of continuing to push the action forward and never really letting the tiredness affect him. And a great opening fight here at Hard Knocks 34, and brought to you by Big 4 Motors. And let's have a look at the replay. This is going to be that spike I was talking about, where there's some elevation here by Jai Hogan, and he comes down, and not too much height out of there, and again with Beauchamp there, but that knee very dangerously close to the eyes. So again, a big fight there, and Nolan Shergold with his arms up in the air, and I think that's more just a celebration of winning the battle with himself to get in the cage and go through those 3-minute rounds. Has to know he might end up on the short end of this one, but it looks like we do have the official decision, and for that decision, we're going to throw it up to Jay to dance.
And now, the Big 4 Motors Hard Knocks 34 official decision, brought to you by Urban Optique. The winner by unanimous decision, in the red corner, Jai Hogan.
So Jai Hogan is your winner. We are going to bring it up to Ryan, who's going to be with Jai now.
I'll get you here, center of the cage. You have a very tough fight tonight, a very tough opponent. Looked like you were going for the submissions early and often, and he just kept getting out.
Yeah, and then I gassed. Ran out of fuel there.
Now you had 3 tough rounds. Looked like you came out with the strategy to take the guy down and get inside that reach.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll let you catch your breath for another second. I'll ask one more question while we look at the submission attempt up top. It looked like he had you in the armbar for a second there. You managed to get out of that, and he really tried to get the submission attempts in the third round. Did you feel like you were ahead at that point and you just had to survive to the final bell?
A little bit. I gassed out so hard there, I was just hanging on.
And I'm sure you got coaches and sponsors to thank.
Yeah, thanks to everyone at Canuckles, all my coaches, and my wife supporting me. I was getting ready for this fight. Thanks to all my friends for coming, friends and family.
All right, we'll let you go catch your breath. Let's hear it one more time for your winner, Jai Hogan. A very impressive performance from Jai Hogan there, Ari, in his win over Nolan Shergold. Cage control, definitely the story of that fight.
I love the fact that Jai Hogan was controlling that entire fight. When he was on the ground, the thing I thought he did the best was he went from mount to side, where he could actually score some strikes, do some knees, and work for some submissions that were gonna work for him. Really good fight. These guys are both new guys, but they're right on the right track.
So a promising debut for Nolan Shergold ends in a loss. And you can tell he's got some fans in the building. Jai Hogan comes out your winner. That's it for this episode of Hard Knocks Fighting TV. We want to make sure you check us out online, hardknocksfighting.com, at HK Fighting on Twitter, or check us out on Facebook at Hard Knocks Fighting. For everyone here at the Hard Knocks Fighting Championship, including Ari Tobe and myself, we want to thank you for watching.